Next talk is Truncating TLS Sessions or Truncating TLS Connections by Ben Smyth.
Okay, so thanks for the introduction. Also, thank you to my proctor who's been very generous with his time. So thank you, Alan, for all your support. So I'm an academic. I'm based in Paris, France, and this is joint work with Alfredo Pironti, one of my co-authors. Okay, so what am I going to give you in this talk? Why should you stay in the room? I'm going to give you three attacks. I'm going to give you an attack against the Helios electronic voting system, which allows you to cast votes on behalf of honest voters. I'm going to get full control of Microsoft Live accounts. Basically, I'm going to reset the password so I have a new password for the user. And I'm also going to get temporary access to Google accounts so you can read someone's Gmail. Now, the challenge to you guys in this attack, I'm going to show you a common attack vector. There's a common theme between these three attacks. I'm going to show that to you. I'm kind of hoping that you'll see this and you'll think, well, based upon what I've shown you, we can also attack other systems, and I would look forward to talking to you about other attacks that you can think about. Vendors, I'm interested in talking to you as to how we can secure your products. Okay, so a bit of background. TLS security, what does it give you? When you use HTTPS to visit blackhat.com, what do you get? Well, you get the server authentication, so you know you're talking to blackhat.com and not someone else. You get confidentiality, that is, I am communicating with Black Hat and I know no one else is reading that communication. And I also get integrity. What integrity means is messages are received as sent. So if I send 101, Black Hat receives 101. Now, integrity is only guaranteed over a single TLS connection, okay? And this will be important later on in the talk. Integrity is guaranteed with respect to two termination modes. We have graceful connection closure, which is upon a successful closure of the session. And in this case, all messages are received as sent. So if I send 101, Black Hat receives 101. We also have fatal closure. And in this case, we only get a guarantee that a prefix of the messages have been received as sent. So maybe I send 101, the Black Hat server receives 110, so a prefix there, the first digit, the 1, was received as sent, but the rest of it is garbage. Unfortunately, none of the browsers in use today all the browsers ignore the termination mode. Okay, so they just ignore it completely. And that's a bit of an issue. Actually, if you look at the TLS specification, it's actually been changed due to this widespread implementation practice. This isn't directly related to the attack I'm talking about, but there have been changes to the spec due to this widespread practice of ignoring what was originally written there. And as a consequence of these changes, we have what's known as a TLS truncation attack. So I'd like to start by explaining what a TLS truncation attack is with this simple demo. So let's suppose that I want to transfer some money to Charlie's Angels, okay? And I have this naive piece of code here. It's very short, but it's sufficient for this demo purpose. Now what's going on is my recipient here is Charlie's Angels. But let me further suppose that that TLS is going to fragment that message into two individual fragments, okay? So TLS is fragmenting. And let's suppose it fragments at the apostrophe, so it's going to fragment just about here. Now how can I attack this? Well, I just drop the second fragment. I don't need to know what it is, I just drop the second fragment. And then the money is transferred to Charlie rather than Charlie's Angels. Why does this work? Actually, we've tested this against the Apache web server, and it works against Apache. What's Apache getting wrong? Well, it's ignoring the termination mode. So what we could do to fix it is only execute wire transfers upon a graceful connection closure. That's not what it does. And it also ignores the content length field, which is quite surprising. So it's willing to accept just Charlie as the recipient rather than the whole length that it's expecting. The fixes are straightforward. You just need to patch those two things. So I think that's the best way to illustrate what TLS truncation attacks are. But in this talk, I'm actually going to be focusing on an even simpler version. I'm not going to be relying on fragmentation. I'm just going to be truncating the entire thing. So I'll just drop that transfer completely, and I'll show you how we can launch attacks using that idea. Okay, so I've told you what TLS gives us. So what challenges do we have in web development? TLS is not a golden bullet. There is no golden bullet. So what do we have to do? Well, the browser's maintaining multiple connections. This is kind of what we want, because we want some sort of performance. So we want to download images in parallel, yeah? And that's kind of what we expect our browsers to do. But TLS only gives us guarantees across a single connection. So if your web application is loading things in parallel, and you're only getting guarantees on individual connections, then if you require any kind of ordering, then you need to do that at the web application level. TLS is not going to give you that, okay? And of course, we also have the adversary, or the attacker. I'm assuming the attacker has full control of the network. Perhaps it's the router, perhaps there's a bit of hardware between the network card and the wire, and therefore the attacker is in the position to read all traffic, delete messages, and inject messages. Now TLS will protect certain things here. For example, if I read a TLS packet, it's encrypted. I only see the ciphertext. I can't get the plain text back unless I have the key. If I delete messages, then I break the TLS sequence numbers. But nonetheless, this is what the adversary has the capabilities to do. Okay, so attack number one is against the Helios electronic voting system. So electronic voting is one of my research areas that I'm particularly interested in. And I should probably distinguish between the current situation, which is on the right-hand side of that slide, and the sort of ideal situation on the left-hand side, or the other way around for you guys who are looking this way. So the current situation is, at least in North America and also parts of Europe, you walk into a poll station and you interact with a DRE, a voting machine. And you tell the voting machine how you'd like to vote, and you kind of hope it did the right thing. But you really have no idea what it did. It could have made you a pizza, it might not have been plugged in, it might have cast a vote for your candidate, that's the kind of ideal situation, or it may have cast a vote for someone else's candidate. So I don't know if you can read the slides there, the pictures I have. On the top picture, the exit poll guy is asking, and who do you hope you voted for? The voter has no idea. Interactive with DRE, doesn't know what it did. On the bottom there's a lady with a sticker who says, I think I voted. She doesn't know that her vote was actually recorded. The systems I'm working on, and Helios is one such system, is a cryptographically verifiable system. And the idea is that I interact with a DRE, I have no idea what the DRE does, I don't need to trust it. What I do is I just use it anyway, I hope for the best, and then later on I check that it did what it was supposed to. Okay, so I can verify that my vote really was counted afterwards. Okay, so that's what these electronic voting systems that I look at are trying to deliver. And I was looking at this particular electronic voting system where I discovered kind of a weird behavior which led to the rest of the results I'm going to show you. Okay, so when I cast, so it's a web-based system. You can think about going to poll station, your DRE is basically a web interface, you have a browser. And when you cast a vote in this system, when you finish casting, you get this screen down the bottom here. My election was called Dropping IP Packets Demo, and it tells me my vote was successfully cast. It also gives me this hash, which is used for the verifiability aspects of the system. And finally, it tells me, for your safety, we have logged you out. Now, what's quite weird, I had Firebug open whilst I was looking at this, and I was looking at the network traffic, and it told me I'd logged out. Then I saw a logout request hitting the network, which was a bit strange, because it told me I'd logged out, and then it was sending the logout. So I looked at the HTML source code, and indeed I have the text which tells me I've logged out, and then there's this iframe which is loading some kind of logout code. So I spoke to the developers, and I said, you know, there seems to be an issue here. You're telling me I've logged out, and then you're issuing the logout request. And they came back to me and said, but this is okay, because you can't do anything bad. And I kind of wasn't really believing them. And they explained it to me. They said, well, if you drop the logout request, then you've broken the TLS sequence numbers, so you can't do anything after that. And I still wasn't convinced, so I had a little play around, and I found that's not quite true, because my browser's maintaining multiple connections. When the logout request is issued on one connection, I can drop that connection completely, ignore it, and then rely on one of the other connections in the pool to do what I like. Now, Helios allows what's called revoting, so I'm allowed to cast arbitrary many ballots, and my last ballot is counted. So once I've dropped this logout request as the attacker, I can then use the DRE to cast a new vote on behalf of that voter. Now what's really cool about Helios is, or what's kind of cool, because the attack shouldn't be there, but what is quite cool is that Helios is verifiable, so I can actually verify this attack happened as a voter. So I knew I had been hacked, but there's not much I can do about it after the fact. The fix is quite straightforward. You need to make actions 1 and 2 atomic, or you can just execute action 2 before action 1, right? So you do the logout before you tell the user they've logged out. Okay, so so that was the first attack. We'd broken voting systems, and then we started to think, well, where else can we apply this? Where else can we attack? So implicitly in the last example, we had a DRE. Now, that's kind of obvious that it's shared between many voters, okay? So I didn't bother to mention that. In this example, I'm going to implicitly mention there is a shared computer. I'm going to assume it's in a public library. I'm kind of hoping that it's trusted. So when I interact with it, it should give me some security if I'm lucky. And the adversary in this case is only going to access that computer after the honest user has finished. So let me give a video demo of this attack working. Okay, so my setup is I have a virtual machine which is running in the background there. And then my hosts, I'm using IP tables, which is like the adversary's control over the network. And I've configured IP tables to drop packets of length 474 to 506. And we got those figures through traffic analysis. Okay? So if I now go from the host to the virtual machine, I'm now assuming that the honest user is using this shared computer, and they're going to visit hotmail.com. So the honest user comes along to the machine, authenticates. This is just a dummy account that I set up for the purposes of demonstration. And I'm signing into Hotmail, but I've been redirected to account.live.com. This is because some information is missing from that account, so when it logs in, you get redirected. Hotmail has seamlessly authenticated me to account.live.com, so I have a session with account.live and a session with Hotmail. And this is kind of a required part of the attack. You can actually trick the web browser into visiting account.live.com, even if all the information is there, but I'm not going to go into that. I think the details of that are in the technical report. Okay, so the honest user just wants to read their email, so they just click save, they click through this screen, and they're logging into their Hotmail account, or their Outlook account, I'm not sure on the current branding. So I have 2 emails here, this is just, as I say, this is just a dummy account. All I'm going to do is immediately log out. So assume I've been reading my email for some time, I log out. Now what this logout should do is drop authentication with account.live.com and hotmail.com, because they're the services that I've been authenticated to. And Microsoft is telling me it's done that. It says you're signed out. So as a sort of security conscious user, I've now done my bit, and I should be able to leave this terminal in the knowledge that no one can take control of my account. But what's happened is the IP tables rule that I've set up has dropped the logout request that was sent to account.live.com, so I still have an active session there, which I wasn't supposed to have. You're laughing now, you wait to see the next bit. So I'd click edit account information, or edit security information. I add an alternative email address, which is now the adversary's email address. And this is the really great bit. I just click save here, and it actually saves it without asking for my password. That was kind of a really bad idea. If you're doing security sensitive operations, ask the user to re-authenticate. Okay, so I've now set up this alternative email address. I'm signing out of account.live.com. Probably didn't need to do that, but I'll do it anyway. And I can then go to hotmail.com. And I think you can probably work out where I'm going with this now. Click the can't access your account link. Provide the honest user's email address. The hardest bit here is defeating the CAPTCHA. I can't do CAPTCHAs. I really can't. Bots can do CAPTCHAs because they outsource them to people like me. But I really can't. Look how long it takes me to type this string in. It's just my brain it can't process this string. Maybe I should learn to read. Okay, so I click email me here a set link, hit next. a reset password, a password reset has been sent to me by email. I can now access the Gmail account that again I set up for the purposes of demonstration. I authenticate to Gmail. We get to see a lovely picture of my boss in the top right-hand corner, very briefly. And of course, I received an email from Hotmail, which includes the reset link, which I'm then going to follow. And once I follow that link, I can then provide a new password for the user, and we have complete control of that Hotmail account. So what went wrong? Thank you. So what went wrong? Sorry?
Did the victim get the mail as well?
Did the victim get the mail as well? I don't believe, well, it's to their Hotmail account, so if there's an email in the, you will see in a minute. Once it logs in, you'll see if the user did get their mail as well. I think if there are multiple alternative emails set up, then the email will be sent to all of those multiple emails, multiple email addresses. In this instance, there was just one alternate email set up, so it would only be the attacker that got that message. Actually, the attacker could also delete any alternative emails whilst they're in there, so the user wouldn't know until they tried to get in next. Okay, some redirects going on there. Eventually I get into hotmail.com. Okay, so then I'm in. There's no indication in the account itself. Okay, back to the slides. So what went wrong? I was told I'd signed out before the server had even received the sign out request. And I sort of then abused that by truncating the sign out request that's sent, and I can access the account on another connection. How do you fix this? Well, you can centralize your authentication system. Microsoft won't be doing that, it's going to take too much effort. Or you can chain sign out requests together. And we'll see how to do that on the next slide. How am I doing for time?
Fine.
Okay.
12 minutes.
Oh, we've got loads of time. Okay, so on to Google. Similar situation, we're assuming that there's a shared computer, and we're going to manipulate the procedure in a similar manner. So when you log out of Google, you visit the first URL here, accounts.google.com, and we get a redirect back. And this redirect, you kind of go to accounts.com, you get redirected to something else, and then you log out of Gmail, and then you go back, and then you log out of YouTube, and eventually at the end of this chain, you're told you've logged out successfully. Now if you do this in the correct manner, it works, but the manner they've achieved here doesn't quite get it right. For those of you that have good vision, you may notice that there's a HTTP here, rather than HTTPS. So it's already broken completely already, because you can just drop that request and send back whatever you like to the user. But even if you fix that bit, the attack still works. So let's look at how you attack the existing system as it stands. Okay, so this is kind of the code that you get back on the redirect. So you go to accounts.com, Google Accounts, whatever it is. You get this redirect back, you follow it, you get this HTML code. The idea of this HTML code is it loads this image from Gmail, which as a side effect signs you out. It seems like quite a strange construction, but that's what it's doing. And then the idea is that this onload event up here will only be executed once the image has been loaded, right? That's what onload does. And then so the idea is that you sign out first, then you do the onload, which redirects you to the next part in the chain, okay? So that's the idea, that's what it's supposed to do. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that. So if you do a TCP reset on the image, so if you do a TCP drop on the image, then it hangs the browser, which is kind of what we expect, because the image hasn't loaded, so the onload event will never be executed. If you do a TCP reset, however, then the browser gets a fatal connection closure, which it completely ignores and executes the onload event anyway. So then you've dropped the sign out request, which should have been sent to Gmail. It never gets there. You're still authenticated. It does the do redirect. The Gmail server still thinks you're authenticated. The user is told they've logged out when that isn't the case. Okay, so we have a very similar scenario to Hotmail. There is also a video demonstration of this. I believe Black Hat will be putting it online. If Black Hat don't put it online, then it will be on my website in about 2 weeks' time. And you can take a look at that. So the issue with Gmail is you only get 5 minutes access, which is quite bizarre. There's some housekeeping on the Google server, which after 5 minutes realizes you've kind of launched an attack and boots you off, which is quite nice. It's also quite intriguing as to why they didn't use this kind of booting out process to do the logout itself. I don't know why they didn't do that. It seems a sensible way to do it. That would be a nice fix. Another way to fix this attack would be to handle the fatal connection closure. In that case, the onload event would never be executed. You can also do some clever stuff with on errors, but I don't want to go down that route. I don't think it's particularly sensible. You can centralize the authentication. I think it's unlikely that Google are going to do that. Again, it's too much of an investment. Or you can chain the sign-out request securely, and we detail how we'd go about that in the technical report, which accompanies this talk. Okay, to summarize, we have 3 attacks against Helios, Google, and Microsoft, and they all exploit this notion of the user believing one thing and the server believing another. So the user believes they've signed out, whereas the server is still maintaining some session. And as a consequence of this, you can't use shared computers with any hope of security, right? Because this just doesn't work. We've proposed some fixes, and using these fixes, you can then get the security back that you'd expect. We've disclosed all these vulnerabilities to vendors. As of yet, none of them have been fixed. I believe Microsoft are currently working on it, and Google have acknowledged the vulnerability, but they've got higher priorities to work on. So the challenge to you guys is, where else can you use this? What else can we attack? And I'd be happy to take questions here or outside after this talk. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So you close the browser, does it?
If you close the browser. Okay.
You've gone off camera.
Okay. I'm off camera. I need to get back on stage. So the question is, if I close the browser, does it fix the problem? If you close the Firefox browser, it does fix the problem. If you close an Internet Explorer browser, it doesn't. Yeah.
So when you start a new process, how is that replayed? I guess I'm confused by that. You're keeping the TLS connection open, but that goes away when the browser goes away.
I'm not sure what Internet Explorer are doing, but I know under Internet Explorer closing the browser doesn't help. That may have been fixed now. We did the demo with Internet Explorer in December last year, but certainly then it wasn't working. They may have fixed that, I'm not sure. But certainly at the time, it's broken as well. Yeah.
So 2 questions. What was that size of the data that you launched with 470 something?
Yeah. So all of that information will be in the report. It's 474 to 506. That's going to vary slightly browser to browser due to the information that's included. So the question is, if a user were to clear all their cache, I assume it depends on what you mean by clearing the cache. I think that should help, but.
Yeah, if you're in Firefox, you Control-Shift-Delete, and then you say, get rid of everything, all my browsing history, all my cookies, all my session info.
Yeah, certainly. So if you delete all the cookies, then you have protected yourself against that attack. That's certainly recommended. Any other questions?
Could you stand up, please?
I think the question was, I couldn't quite hear, does this influence the user experience by dropping packets? In the demos we didn't actually notice any difference between dropping packets and not dropping packets. So to get a packet in that range seems to be quite uncommon. But of course, if you're dropping every packet in this range, then you're going to cause some issues to the user. You could do this in a more intelligent manner. We just sort of use the easiest approach that was available to us. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions outside or outside. Send 101, Black Hat receives 101. Now integrity is only guaranteed over a single TLS connection, okay? And this will be important later on in the talk. Integrity is guaranteed with respect to two termination modes. We have graceful connection closure, which is upon a successful closure of the session. And in this case, all messages are received as sent. So if I send 101, Black Hat receives 101. We also have fatal closure, and in this case, we only get a guarantee that a prefix of the messages have been received as sent. So maybe I send 101, the Black Hat server receives 110, so a prefix there, the first digit, the 1, was received as sent, but the rest of it is garbage. Unfortunately, none of the browsers in use today all the browsers ignore the termination mode. Okay.
Next talk is Truncating TLS Sessions or Truncating TLS Connections by Ben Smyth.
Okay, so thanks for the introduction. Also, thank you to my proctor who's been very generous with his time. So thank you, Alan, for all your support. So I'm an academic. I'm based in Paris, France, and this is joint work with Alfredo Pironti, one of my co-authors. Okay, so what am I going to give you in this talk? Why should you stay in the room? I'm going to give you three attacks. I'm going to give you an attack against the Helios electronic voting system, which allows you to cast votes on behalf of honest voters. I'm going to get full control of Microsoft Live accounts. Basically, I'm going to reset the password so I have a new password for the user. And I'm also going to get temporary access to Google accounts so you can read someone's Gmail. Now, the challenge to you guys in this attack, I'm going to show you a common attack vector. There's a common theme between these three attacks. I'm going to show that to you. I'm kind of hoping that you'll see this and you'll think, well, based upon what I've shown you, we can also attack other systems, and I would look forward to talking to you about other attacks that you can think about. Vendors, I'm interested in talking to you as to how we can secure your products. Okay, so a bit of background. TLS security, what does it give you? When you use HTTPS to visit blackhat.com, what do you get? Well, you get the server authentication, so you know you're talking to blackhat.com and not someone else. You get confidentiality. That is, I am communicating with Black Hat and I know no one else is reading that communication. And I also get integrity. What integrity means is messages are received as sent. So if I was going to fragment that message into two individual fragments, okay? So TLS is fragmenting. And let's suppose it fragments at the apostrophe, so it's going to fragment just about here. Now how can I attack this? Well, I just drop the second fragment. I don't need to know what it is, I just drop the second fragment. And then the money is transferred to Charlie rather than Charlie's angels. Why does this work? Actually, we've tested this against the Apache web server, and it works against Apache. What's Apache getting wrong? Well, it's ignoring the termination mode. So what we could do to fix it is only execute wire transfers upon a graceful connection closure. That's not what it does. And it also ignores the content length field, which is quite surprising. So it's willing to accept just Charlie as the recipient rather than the whole length that it is. So they just ignore it completely. And that's a bit of an issue. Actually, if you look at the TLS specification, it's actually been changed due to this widespread implementation practice. This isn't directly related to the attack I'm talking about, but there have been changes to the spec due to this widespread practice of ignoring what was originally written there. And as a consequence of these changes, we have what's known as a TLS truncation attack. So I'd like to start by explaining what a TLS truncation attack is with this simple demo. So let's suppose that I want to transfer some money to Charlie's angels, okay? And I have this naive piece of code here. It's very short, but it's sufficient for this demo purpose. Now what's going on is my recipient here is Charlie's angels. But let me further suppose that that TLS is